Okay, people, I was watching a video. These people were sitting in a Starbucks parking lot waiting to get some coffee. They were sitting in a car talking. Cops pull up and wanted their IDs and saying ridiculous things. Well, anyways, while one woman was talking, the other woman was on the phone calling somebody, and instead of doing that, it's always easiest. I've done it plenty of times. And now you have the internet and your phone, you could look it up and go over it. With said public servant who took an oath, and that was, to uphold, defend the Constitution. And that Constitution was written to serve and protect you against wayward public servants. Okay, look up the oath of public service, which is basic all around version of what every public servant, the oath every public servant takes. It's, depending on the oath of office or, the oath the policemen take. But the police take an oath. You should look up their oath. And violating the oath is mandatory fines, removal from public service, and incarceration. You can look that up too. Okay, but law on ID check, just review it with them. I'm in Illinois, so this is what will come up in Illinois. If you're in Georgia or if you're in Texas, law on ID check in your state will come up. In Illinois, you are generally not required to show identification unless a police officer has reasonable suspicion you are involved in a crime. You can be asked for identification in a public place if the officer reasonably believes you are have committed, or about to commit a crime. Specifically, the officer must be in a public place. Reasonably believe you are part of a crime. Reasonably. So they must articulate that. Tell you they are a police officer. See these people getting grabbed off the streets for deportation. So I mean, this holds true for anybody behind a badge. Okay. Okay, additionally, you are not required to present an ID as a passenger during a traffic stop unless there is reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, according to O'Flaherty law. The Real ID Act requires Real ID compliant license or ID to board a domestic flight or to enter secure federal facilities, according to the Transportation Security Administration. Individual Illinois ID verification laws. Okay, can you refuse to have your ID scanned in Illinois? Yes. Okay. What states have stop and ID laws? Several states have stop and ID laws which allow police to require individuals to state their names and potentially provide other identification if they have suspicion of criminal activity. And they must state what that criminal activity is. These laws generally don't require an individual to carry or display an identification, but rather to state their name if requested by a police officer who has reasonable suspicion that a crime has been or is being or is about to be committed. Okay. But you also must consider the rules of professional conduct. It clearly states, that all laws are to be created in the public interest. It says all lawyers are to do what's in the public interest and maintain the public trust. And the legal system is part of the public trust. So says the public trust doctrine. Look up the public trust doctrine, okay? And in order to work in the legal system, everything must be done in the public interest. Okay, all laws are created in public interest. I told you about what the Constitution says about the public trust. And that requires everybody in public service to do what's in the public interest and maintain the public trust. Now remember, the Constitution is law. The U.S. Constitution is the law of the land, the king of laws. No law can be made that's repugnant to the United States Constitution. That law would be null and void. Tax codes, voter laws, or voter suppression laws, as they're called. Okay, that's not in the public interest, and that's not maintaining public trust. And remember, the Constitution is written to serve and protect we the people. So any adjustments made to said Constitution, or as they might call changing it, there's legal procedures that aren't being followed. Some people call it a constitutional crisis, when it's actually, the legal term is usurping the Constitution. And when you look up usurping the Constitution, it'll tell you, it'll eventually come down to a constitutional crisis, and it'll explain to you the constitutional crisis because one branch of the government it exceeds its authority by overrunning the other branches of the government, basically breaking the law. You can't take an oath to the Constitution and usurp it and decide, I don't have to do what the other branches say. And then in putting somebody in those offices, set offices or branches of the government, that put their loyalty to a politician, a political party, Wall Street, before they do we the people, is actually violating the oath. The oath requires them to put their loyalty to we the people above all. And it even tells you that in the preamble of the rules of professional conduct. Okay, these are for all lawmakers, all and enforcing laws. And there are laws that they know that shouldn't stand because they were made under the color of law. You take these laws that you think that are illegal because they're illogical, they're not in your best interest. Well, not just your best interest personally, the public interest. It says so in the preamble of the rules of professional conduct. And a lot of people criticized me throughout the years because I've used the American Bar Association version as well as the Illinois, because I'm in Illinois. And they're pretty much in line. But every state is required to use the model rules of professional conduct, which is you can find with the American Bar Association. So if you compare yours to theirs, you'll find some states. You'll find that some of these states have removed rules, and one rule I noticed that's been removed from several states is Rule 3.8, Special Rules of the Prosecutor, which is illegal. That was in the interest of the bar, not in the public interest. Okay, so there's, depending on how many laws you want to pick up. I'm just trying to teach you what due process is. So anything I say you can look up, and I strongly suggest you hold me to the letter of the law as I will you in any court of law, which I've done to many attorneys. And that's how I win. People say I'm lucky. I'm not lucky. I read this years ago. I like books. I learned to read before I started school. I grew to have a love of literature, and as I grew older, my love of literature turned into a lust. I developed this ideal that, a strong mind is just as essential as a strong body. And in this day and age, it's even more important to be intellectually, adverse, open-minded. It's the only way you must learn what you can learn. I'm teaching you things they won't teach you in school. I found the rules of professional conduct back in 1979. I wasn't even old enough to graduate high school. But I knew growing up that I needed an attorney on call. And I didn't have the money for that. And back in those days, there was no way I was going to be able to find any employment to be able to afford a lawyer on call. So I thought I did growing up. I wanted to be a lawyer, you know, and I eventually found out there was no way I was getting in there because it became more and more expensive. And then I found the rules and the codes, found out exactly what due process was, fair trial, effective assistance of counsel, quick and speedy trial. Look up a quick and speedy trial. There are mandates to that which are consistently violated. Consistently. And it's actually a way out of prison. If you were denied a quick and speedy trial, which is your constitutional right, just look up quick and speedy trial. There are mandates, limitations, things they can and cannot do, which is totally ignored. No, and it's your right, but you're never offered it. And they say it's only for criminal cases for a quick and speedy trial. But if you read the rules of professional conduct, it's a mandate to be diligent, to expedite litigation, to communicate this to you. But nobody does. So that's why so essentially, no matter what court of law you're in, you have the right to a quick and speedy trial. Effective assistance counsel is described in the rules of professional and the code of judicial conduct. So basically, everybody's supposed to be making sure everybody else does all that because those are the laws within a court of law. And if nobody does any of that or breaks any rule, violates any code, that's misconduct, and it's mandatory to report misconduct in the rules of professional conduct and the code of judicial conduct. And in the rules of professional conduct, as well as the code of judicial conduct, when you read reporting misconduct is mandatory. It's mandatory for judges to report any judge or lawyer they know that violated the rules or the codes. And it says that as well as in the rules of professional conduct, reporting misconduct. It tells you reporting misconduct is mandatory if you know of any judge that violates the codes or any lawyer that violates the rules. Not just the rules and the codes, but any other applicable law in a court of law. The rules and the codes are laws. Okay, so if you want due process, if you want a fair trial, if you want effective assistance of counsel, and you have an ongoing case, I strongly suggest, I'm not giving you legal advice, just a strong suggestion, print out the rules, the codes, and take them with you. Don't bring it up to your lawyer before you go into court. Just go into court and tell the judge, hey, these are your legal obligations, to me and the public in general. I'm looking forward to having effective assistance of counsel. So in order to assure that, I would like to go over the Code of Judicial Conduct and the Rules of Professional Conduct with you and the attorneys present here in court. And you're going to have to read them because, the judge will tell you, no, talk to your, in the Code of Judicial Conduct, it's the judge is legally required to hear you out. Okay. And I went over the code brief. I did a video on the Code of Judicial Conduct. Okay, so no matter what it is, where it is, there's always a law. And I always teach people to use it. I've been pulled over, stopped, asked for ID. Cop got mad because he wanted to question me. And I told him, I was searching for probable cause. Excuse me? I said, yeah. That's entrapment. I don't have to answer any questions, right? Well, yes, I don't have to answer any questions, especially since you're trying to seek probable cause through entrapment. You're asking me questions to which you can say later, hey, I was asking him a bunch of questions, he lied to me, thus establishing probable cause. So no, I'm not going to let that happen. Excuse me? Yes, officer. I mean, you know, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used you in a court of law. He says, that's your Miranda rights. I said, yeah, that you haven't given me yet. Well, I'm not arresting you. Then you have no right to ask me any questions. I mean, what is this, a traffic stop? Or is this a drive-by stop and frisk? And let me remind you, a stop and frisk is just a pat down to see if I have any weapons. You can't go through my personal belongings, my pockets, my wallet. So if you look up Terry stop, stop and frisk. No, they don't. They can't go through they can't go through your pockets. They can't legally ask you questions. That's entrapment. That's just to establish probable cause. And it's on the internet. So I mean, it's just review these laws. What said officer not so friendly, and it's on the internet. You can both go over it together. Okay, so that way he doesn't violate the oath he took. Because if he does, that's mandatory fines, removal from public service, and incarceration. Look it up. It's on the net. And if you go to court, remind the state's attorney of Rule 3.8 special responsibilities of the prosecutor. Okay, and read it to him. And once you violate one rule, it's impossible not to violate multiple rules. You violate one, you violate multiple rules. And then the judge is supposed to tell the state's attorney, hey, you're supposed to make sure this, that. State's attorneys are not legal, it's illegal for them to bring forth a case in court that they can't prove, but they'll do it anyways. They'll do it anyways. And the public defender will say, hey, take a plea deal, because the state's attorney, they'll add more charges, and which they will, which is violating the double jeopardy clause, And, the public defender is supposed to report the state's attorney for misconduct, but they don't, because reporting misconduct is mandatory. And, but then the state's attorney would have to report the public defender, for ineffective assistance of counsel for multiple violations of the rules of professional conduct, and the judge for violating the code of judicial conduct for not reporting the lawyers for violating the rules of professional conduct, prosecutorial misconduct, ineffective assistance of counsel. I could go on and on and on about the laws, but if I don't want to make these too long, and some people criticizing me because I'm reading the law, it doesn't make you, no, it doesn't make me a lawyer. But it doesn't make me illiterate either. I mean, everything I read to you is in basic English. This is the law. It's in layman's terms. All right, it's not that hard to understand. And some people tell me, well, my lawyer said this or the judge said that. And I says, was it in accordance with the letter of the law? I said, what? Because sometimes people, I give them these laws, and, somebody in the legal field will tell them that doesn't mean what you think it means. I said, but did you forget because I always remind people of the letter of the law. The letter of the law is a mandate in interpreting the law, which means whatever is written must be done word for word to the letter. Anything other is disinformation. It's a legal term, meaning they're lying. That's illegal. If you read the preamble, the rules of professional conduct, it's actually illegal for any judge or lawyer, not just, it's to lie in court. And it says not just in the court, but in their personal life as well. There's, supposed to be a certain demeanor, appearance, and it's illegal for any judge to be political. They must always have an apolitical mindset, no showing any bias, prejudice, favoritism, so but you'd have to read the Code of Judicial Conduct to understand it. I've even seen Donald Trump complain about judges taking sides, political sides. They're supposed to be apolitical, which is true. It's the law. It's the law. But you would have to know the rules and the codes to know that. The rules of professional conduct and the code of judicial conduct. You would have to know that. Okay, but I'm just saying that, if people want to make it a political thing, and if you're a Trump supporter, well, there's a thing there, you want to get rid of these political judges, or you want to stop judges making decisions, because of politics, because, judges can't even appear, politicians as well as, you would have to look up ethics in politics, and you could also look up where to file for violations of said ethics violations, where to file for ethics violations. And I think I did a video on that. I don't even watch most of them. I'm just reading the law to you. That's all. I'm just reading it to you. And to say anything other than what is written, that's literally breaking the law, the letter of the law. I couldn't and wouldn't do that because, people I've talked to on a prolonged basis know that, there's nothing I love more than the law. Constitution, the history of it, the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, the Magna Carta, the original no justice, no peace movement. That's where it started. Magna Carta. Legally, if you want them to hear you when you're yelling no justice, no peace, research the Magna Carta. The original no justice, no peace movement. They'll know what you're talking about legally when you mention the Magna Carta, the origins of the rule of law, why the rule of law was established to abolish qualified immunity. Then I did a video when the United States started using qualified immunity back in the 50s, and Pearson versus Ray during the civil rights movements. They arrested some white preachers because they were sitting with some black preachers in the colored-only section at a bus depot or a train depot. I think it was a bus depot, but they were going south to encourage people to register to vote, because, in some states they didn't like minorities voting. It was a power grab, But the cops, judge said, well, they didn't know the law. They thought it was the law. There was a sign on the wall. Hey, colored people only, colored section, And around the same time, I forgot exactly when, Lyndon B. Johnson signed in the Desegregation Act. But I mean, come on, what does the Constitution say? Every man is endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Amongst these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Quite a poetic version of the rule of law. The rule of law. The rule of law clearly states no man above the law. No man. Let me reiterate that. No person above the law. And additionally, no person below. The law applies equally to everyone. This is the rule of law. So ask yourself logically, how can qualified immunity exist? It can't. It's contrary to the rule of law. And Thurgood Marshall clearly stated, the United States Constitution, there's a king of laws, the law of the land. any law repugnant to the United States Constitution is null and void. I'm just logically and legally speaking. If you review the laws that I've been discussing with you, take advantage of my disadvantage I had to surf through this using the Dewey Decimal System. Okay. Your advantage is your phone. I'm showing you. And I found it amazing. I didn't grow up in a computer generation. My boomer ass had to buy a computer, figure out how to set it up, which was easy. I was pretty good in electronics. But as far as programming and all that other stuff, I didn't know anything about it. And I had to teach myself about the internet and quite a few things. It was an interesting ride, but here I am telling you about it's the reason I needed to get on the internet. The reason I needed to find out if all this information that was in my head was on the internet, and here it is. That's all I'm trying to show you. All right? I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. I didn't go to law school. No, but that doesn't mean I didn't read the same books. I took the time. I didn't get the degree, but I took the knowledge. It's not a given. I had to find it. And for most people, getting this is quite expensive. Getting this knowledge. And I've been chased out of some of the best libraries there are, law libraries. I didn't go to school there, so they didn't like it. But either way, I still find myself learning more. I still surf the net for anything and everything I can possibly find concerning the law. People ask questions, and I'm trying to tell them. Seriously, if you get pulled over, use the law, review it with, whoever is behind the badge there, at that situation, and people were talking about the DOJ, FBI, and I said, well, their job duties are right there on the internet. Look up the internet. The DOJ has a website. The FBI has a website. Department of Transport has a website. See, and remember, these entities are part of the public trust. Any taxpayer generated paycheck, they work for the public trust. We the people. And as far as this, I told you, it's not a constitutional crisis. It's usurping the Constitution, which is illegal. You can't take the oath and then turn around and usurp it. No, that's illegal. It's called conspiracy against rights under the color of law. It's a legal term. Look where to file a conspiracy against rights under the color of law, and you'll find said agencies that will handle this. And those are civil rights violations, seriously. You're depriving the whole nation of medical care. Voter suppression laws, so that way people can't vote against you. There's so many laws, and that's what I'm talking about. That's all I talk about, the law. And I give you a lot of laws that people aren't discussing. Violating the oath is mandatory fines, removal from public service, and incarceration, from policemen to the president. Okay? Every public servant. Look it up. It's on the net, and I also did some videos reviewing that law. Okay, people, the only thing I'm giving you is a law, and I'm reading it to you. You just didn't know it was there. My pointing out is irrelevant. Knowledge isn't a given, it's a taken. Take it like I did. Literally. Word for word. To the letter. It's the law. It's the law. May your Creator be with you. May He rain, He, she, them, they. Rain many blessings upon your life. I wish you a long life and good health.